Hello everyone, good morning. In yesterday's session, we've seen how procure to pay cycle works in Fusion Cloud application. The procure to pay cycle, yes, you're procuring something from a supplier, or you're buying something from a supplier, and you're paying him for what you've bought. So it's like you buying something from a supplier, receiving those goods, and then you go into accounts payable module, you create an invoice, and you make a payment. But in today's cycle, we'll see, or in today's session, we'll see how order to cash cycle works in a Fusion Cloud application. And in this particular cycle, so this is the crux of any business, right? So any business you do, you're basically selling something to a customer, right? So if it's a manufacturing company, if you take the case of Apple, what does it do? They manufacture electronic devices, iPhone, iPad, or yeah, many other devices, and they sell it to customers and they make cash out of it, right? So yes, we'll see how the order to cash cycle works. So what would be the high level steps involved in this particular process, order to cash cycle? You would have a customer who has shown interest to you or who wants to buy something from you. So what you would do in such case, you would create a sales order. You, in the sense the client, they would create a sales order. And yes, that sales order will have the details of the items that the customer is willing to buy, and you ship the product to the customer, and you create a shipment. And when you ship the product, you do there are two steps involved in there. So there's something called as pick, release, and ship confirmation. So we'll do both the steps, and after you perform both the steps, that would complete a shipping of the items to the customer. Pick, release, it's like you bring the goods that needs to be shipped out to the customer from a specific location where they're sitting in your warehouse into a staging area. That's a pick, release. And the ship confirmation is picking up those goods from that staging area and shipping it to the end destination. Okay, so yeah, it's basically a shipping process split into two different bits. Pick, release brings it from the exact location of the goods to a staging area, and ship confirmation is like picking it up from the staging area and shipping it to the customers. And then after the order is fulfilled, in the sense, yes, you created a sales order, customer has asked you to ship some item, you have shipped it. Then what's the next logical step? You have sold something to a customer and you have delivered it as well, and you need to receive payment from the customer, right? So you need to create an AR invoice and receive the payment from the customer against it. So for that, you need to, so the steps 1, 2, and 3, you would execute them in order management module, order management cloud, and the data needs to be transferred to accounts receivable module so that you can create an AR invoice in ERP cloud. Okay, or AR invoice needs to be created in ERP cloud for whatever goods you have sold in. If you have sold something worth 100 USD, you need to run this particular job called import receivable transactions using auto invoice. And what this job will do is this will import the transactions or interface the data from order management into AR, and invoice gets created. So after the AR invoice is created, yes, there would be a balance due showing up on that AR invoice. So if you have sold something worth 100 USD, the balance due would be 100. And then what client will, what the customer will do, they will make the payment, of course, based on a payment terms. If they are given 30 days time, within 30 days, they will make the payment. And when you receive a payment, what do? You create a receipt in AR. Okay, remember this receipt is different from the receipt you created in procure to pay. That is a PO receipt, meaning you're confirming that you have received the goods. But here you're receiving funds from against an AR invoice. So this is an AR receipt. So whenever someone says receipt, don't get confused. There are multiple receipts possible in Fusion Cloud application. You have to ask them whether they are talking about AR receipt or a PO receipt. So you create an AR receipt. You can create it manually, or you can get the information. You can get the logbox file as well as an alternative. And what you could do, you could load it into the application. So you can create AR receipt manually, and then you can auto apply it against the invoice as well. So if client says that, yeah, I'm paying this 100 USD against this particular invoice that you have sent me, then you create an invoice manually, auto apply it so that the balance due becomes 0. And we verify if the balance due gets adjusted or not. And then we go ahead and post the AR invoice to the, and the ledger to the, you could post AR invoice and receipt to the ledger. Okay, because everything needs to be accounted and it has to be reported from GL module. So these are the steps involved in order to cash. And at this particular point, at step number 3, yes, you have to ship the goods, and you don't have, and it could so happen that you might have to probably manufacture that product as well, right? So if someone asks for an iPhone or an iPad, yeah, you might have to, Apple might have to procure raw materials, build and manufacture that product, and then they have to pick, release, and ship confirm it. And at point number 3, if it is a manufactured product, then the procure to pay cycle comes into picture. You will try to get whatever raw materials you need or whatever items you need to manufacture that particular product. So procure to pay cycle might kick in here. And after you have received the raw materials from a supplier, this cycle goes on, and the procure to pay also goes on in parallel. Okay, let's go ahead and implement the cycle in Fusion Cloud application. And again, yeah, as always, we're not going to get into the user creation or roles or privileges in the session. We try to make use of the seeded users that Oracle exposes. So we log in as SCM IMPL user, SCM supply chain management _ IMPL user. We go into order management module, and we create a sales order first. We will be using computer service and rentals standard customer as an example. And we try to order a laptop. We pick up a specific item, we add it, we search for an item, we add it. And let's try to buy an item. So say, for example, if this customer wants to buy a laptop from you. So what do? You select the customer, and you select the laptop that you need to, that customer is willing to buy. Okay. And you can select from which warehouse you're going to ship the product, because the next logical step would be to ship the product, right? So you select a Seattle as your warehouse, so that you will be shipping it out from Seattle. And then you have a sales order created. And then what you would do, the sales order status will get updated to awaiting shipping. So after the sales order is created, if you wait for a moment, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, the status gets changed to awaiting shipping. And the process would be, the status would be processing at the top, and the line status would be awaiting shipping. And what you could do, you have to go ahead and ship the product out from Seattle or Seattle warehouse, this particular product against this particular sales order. So how do you do it against this particular sales order? So that's when you have to log into, that's when you have to go into supply chain execution, inventory management. And what do? You search for the shipment lines that you need to send out. Remember, here we're not receiving shipment, we are sending out a shipment. In purchasing, it's different. In purchasing, you are receiving goods into your warehouse. Here, you're shipping the product out to the customer. So you select the option as shipment lines, select order, and you search for your order that you have created, a sales order. And what you do, you pick up your sales order line, and then you click on the actions. You have an option to pick release it. Pick release means, yes, get that item wherever it is in that particular warehouse in Seattle. Yeah, the warehouse could be so big that you might have plenty of sub inventories within it, and within the sub inventories you might have locators, etc. So when you do a pick release, it will be picked up from the existing location, whatever location, whatever rack it is in, or from whatever sub inventory, and it will be brought over into a staging work area. And then after that, you create a shipment, and then you ship confirm it. Ship confirmation is like, yeah, from a staging area, you send it out to this particular customer address. And where would that customer address be available? When you create a sales order, you would have a ship to address. So you would be shipping out product from your Seattle warehouse organization to this particular address. And that is what you mean by ship confirmation. Okay. And then you get the confirmation that yes, it's confirmed successfully. And if you go back into the line status, yeah, you should see the status as interfaced. What that means is, yes, this particular line, since it has been shipped out, it has been interfaced into AR interface tables. And what is the interface table for AR invoices? It's RA interface lines. So data has been dumped into that particular table. And what do you need to do? And if you look at the status of the order, it would have been changed to awaiting billing, meaning yes, order has been created, fulfilled, pick release and ship confirmation has been done, and it's time to bill the sales order, meaning receive the cash from customer. And that is when you have to run this particular job. You have to log in as FinIMPL user, and you have to go into tools, schedule process, and you have to run this import receivable transaction using auto invoice job. What this job will do, it will go to AR interface tables. And in that interface table, there would be a record inserted for the sales order that has been shipped. This job will pick up that invoice line, pick up the sales order. It would create an AR invoice. So you would submit it with appropriate parameters. And then if you run it, you would have an import auto invoice. So this job gets triggered. Import auto invoice gets triggered. So this is the actual job which creates AR invoice. And then you have an execution report that gets triggered, which will tell you how many lines were imported successfully. So if you look at the execution report PDF output, you click on this null, it will show you the output file, the PDF file, and the PDF output would tell you whether the lines have been successfully processed or not. And once you get a confirmation there, you can go into receivables billing screen, and you should start seeing your AR invoice created in there. If you go into the stars ribbon, click on manage transactions, and search for the invoice with a sales order reference. You have a field called reference. You search for AR invoice created against that particular sales order. You would be able to search for an AR transaction, AR invoice there. Yes, this is the amount that this particular customer needs to pay within so and so date based on a payment terms. And if you look at the balance details, what would happen? You could see that there is a balance due of $540 from that particular customer, computer service and rentals. And he has net 15 is a payment terms used, meaning this particular customer will have 15 days from the date of invoice to make a payment. So you see a due date there. So he would have to make payment by that particular date. And once you receive a payment from a customer, so he might deposit it in your bank account and he might send you a confirmation. Based on that, you could create a receipt manually in AR module. So again, go into receivables. You should not get into billing now. You have to go into accounts receivable to create a receipt. And you create a receipt manually. And you would pick up that customer account number, and you select the invoice number against which you have received the payment, and you select the amount as well. You apply the amount. So when you create a receipt, you enter the amount, and when you apply it against the invoice, you enter so that amount will be knocked off from the receipt. And you could say submit and auto apply now. Means receipt gets created and it will be applied on the invoice. What does application of receipt on the invoice mean? There is an outstanding balance of 540, right? So if you create a receipt for 100 USD and apply it on top of this receipt, on top of the transaction number, after application of receipt, the balance would be 440. If you create a receipt for 540.79 and apply it against the invoice, the balance should become 0. Okay, so that's what you have to do. So you enter the amount as 540, and then you go ahead and you can pick up a customer site. If you don't pick it up, you will get an error, and that is what I think I tried to show here. Pick up a customer account, and then you create a receipt. After you create a receipt, yes, a receipt gets created. It will be applied against the transaction. Amount due becomes 0. Applied amount is 540.79, whatever is applicable. Okay, and then if you go back into invoice and if you see what is the payment due, it's 0. And then you could account and post AR invoice to ledger. You post the invoice to ledger, and you could also review the accounting entries that get created. You can also post AR receipt as well to the ledger, and you can also see what accounting entries got generated. Okay, so this is a whole process of order to cash. So let's go ahead and execute this whole process in the application now. Okay, so let's start off with the order creation. So let's go and log into the application as SCM IMPL. So let me sign out as PIN IMPL. Sign in as SCM IMPL. And let's go ahead and book a sales order. Go into order management, and you can create an order. Select the customer as computer, service, and rentals. Pick the customer up. And you select the sales, select the business unit. It's US1 business unit. You select the bill to account. And if a customer has multiple ship to address, you have to ask them to which address they want the goods to be shipped, and you pick up appropriate ship to location. And here you need to select what is it that the client exactly wants to buy from you. If it's a laptop of this particular model, you pick it up 95001. Yeah, pick it up. And you enter how many laptops that the client wants to order. If it's 1, you leave it as 1. If it's 10, you change this to 10. I'll keep it as 1. And it's a UOM, so it's each, yes, one quantity. And you click on add. And from the item configuration, you have a sales price derived. So you could add it to the line list, add it to the lines. And then what you have to do, there's one thing that we have to change in the supply. So if you go into shipment details, you go into supply, and you say you select the organization or a warehouse from where you want to ship this product out. Yes, I have that product stored in a Seattle warehouse, so I want to ship it out from that. So you select that, and there's nothing else that you probably have to change. So you have payment terms and few more attributes here. So if you want these terms to be changed, you could change them. Say for example, for a specific sales order, or if you want to give exception, and if you want to select a different payment terms, you could do that. So usually these attributes, billing and payment details, get defaulted from a customer that you pick up. But if you want, you can override them if you want. If you remember, on the AR invoice that is created, you have seen this payment term in there, right? So, so the AR invoice that gets created, the details will be picked up. Some of the details will be picked up from here and defaulted. Okay, so you go ahead and submit the order. Okay, you could see that order is created. Pick up the order number. Click OK. Okay, this is a sales order that got created. Let's wait for the status to change. It's currently not started status. It is processing at the moment. You could see that it is scheduled at the moment. So order status should change to awaiting shipping. So it gets automatically updated. Okay, give it a minute. Okay, it's reserved. So item got reserved first against this particular sales order. And then the status will now change into awaiting shipping. And what that means is, yes, it's time for you to go ahead and ship it out. And how do you ship the product? To ship the product out, you have to go into supply chain execution. You cannot do it from order management. You have to go into supply chain execution, go into inventory management, and you can select the shipment line that you want to pick, release, and ship confirm. Click on this, select shipments, manage shipment lines. I think I've not picked up a wrong, I haven't picked up a right navigation option. So you go into inventory management, you click on the search option, and you search for shipment lines. Change this to order. So be very clear here when you pick up the navigation options. And here, yes, I want to search for shipment lines which are pending against this particular sales order. I'm using a quick search option to achieve that. So you search for it. Yes, a screenshot I've given here, so you can't go wrong. And you could see that there is there's an option. So what do you need to do first? You have to do a pick release and then a ship confirmation. So you go ahead and pick release it first. Pick release is like moving it from its exact location into what do you call a staging work area. So you could see that there is a concurrent request triggered. So you click OK. Okay. Refresh it. So you could click on cancel this. It's already pick release process has been initiated. So if you go into backend, or if you go into monitor process screen, you would be able to see those jobs that are triggered. Let me log into the application from a different instance. I'll just take you into schedule process screen. I just want to show you the jobs that got triggered in there. So if you go into monitor process, you could see that the jobs that got triggered. So you could see that release peak wave. This is a job that got triggered, and it has created a set of documents that would be needed to be attached on a shipment. So you see the print pick slip report has been generated, and if you scroll down, you would be able to see the output as well. The pick slip report. Pick slip report means it based on this report, what they do, they would. That's why I think it's a bunch of files that have been triggered. So what you could do was here, you can download that. Yeah, you can download that, open it with, yeah, you could see a folder created, and you could see a HTML output generated. So what do you see here? You see a pick slip report that has been generated. So go to this particular org, and yeah, this is a customer to whom we need to ship the product out, and this is a carrier they need to use, and against this particular sales order. And what is the pick status? Yes, it has been picked from a store sub inventory, and it has been moved into a staging sub inventory. So if you attend interview, they might probably ask you what exactly is the difference between pick release and ship confirm. Pick release is like you're picking it up from the exact inventory that it is in at the moment. So this particular laptop that we're trying to ship out, it is in a Seattle warehouse, and within a warehouse, within an inventory organization, you have sub inventories, and it is currently in store sub inventory. We have picked it up from there, and we have moved it to the staging. That's what a pick release means. And what does the ship confirm mean? It means, and if it's a locator control item, you would also have a locator information as well. And what do we need to do next? We need to ship conformity, meaning from this particular staging, it needs to be shipped out to this particular ship to location. And that's what we need to do next. So we go back into the application. And you could see that there is a shipment created. There is a shipment created, and the status is staged. And you can go into it. You can open up the shipment. And if for whatever reason, if shipment is not created for you when you do this exercise, what you could do is you could explicitly create it. You could click on auto create shipment. Sometimes when you do a pick release, a shipment might not get created, or you might run into some issues when you try to do it. If you run into an issue, you just click on auto create shipment, and the shipment gets created. You don't need to wait for me. So you just click on the shipment, and what is it that we have to do? Yes, this particular shipment needs to be ship confirmed. Pick release has already been done. Pick release is already done, and all you have to do is ship confirm it now. Meaning, yes, send it out from a staging location to the exact customer location. And what is the shipping method? So send it by a DHL courier. This is a shipping method, and then you have a weight and all other details. Because of course, when you ship it through a courier, you have to mention those details, right? And you're shipping it from here, and you go ahead and ship confirm it. And what's the problem here? I didn't enter anything in the shipped quantity, so it got defaulted to 1, and the status got changed to shipped. So unless if you don't explicitly enter anything in the ship quantity, request quantity would be defaulted in there, and it gets line status got changed into ship. And what will happen after this? If you go back into order management, and if you want to see, if you see the status of the sales order, yes, we created an order, we fulfilled it as well. We have shipped the goods out to the customer. So you try to manage order now. What's the sales order? Sales order number. I think I have copied it. Yeah, let's copy it. Paste it in here. Search for it. Could see a sales order. It is in processing status at the moment. That's fine. But if you scroll down, you would be able to see that it is in a shipped state at the moment. And after there would be a seeded process running in the background, which would pick up the shipped sales orders, and those sales orders will be inserted into RA interface lines table or AR invoice interface tables. And if you look at the backend tables, if you see what jobs have been kicked off in the background when you do the ship confirmation, you would see a bunch of jobs triggered again. So what jobs got triggered? Ship confirm documents report got triggered. It has created a bill of lading report. So what is bill of lading? So this is like this report will tell you when exactly the ownership changes. Okay, so when exactly the ownership changes from you to customer. So you could see that there is a report generated in here. So it's again a HTML file. You can open it. So open up the HTML file. You could see that the bill of lading report has been generated. And then you also have other reports kicked off. You have a shipment advice created, right? You could look at that as well if you want. If you want to see the output, click on it, and you can see the shipment advice. So this shipment advice, it generates an XML file. It ASN, it stands for Advanced Shipment Notice. So if you have, if you probably pass on the information, if you have to pass on the information from order management to some other systems that you're working with, then you would probably use this XML file to pass out the communication to the other external systems. But that's outside of scope of the discussion. So yes, order is ship confirmed. Let's go ahead and refresh it. You could see that it is changed to awaiting billing. What this means is, yes, this order has been created, fulfilled, and the order has been inserted into RA interface lines table, which is an interface table for accounts receivable module. And what do we need to do to import that record and AR invoice need to be created? We need to run a job called import auto invoice job. So let me sign out from this session as a CM-IMPL user, and I would sign in as a fin_IMPL user. Confirm. And sign in as fin_IMPL user. And what job do we need to run? Yes, we have fulfilled the sales order. Yeah, it's awaiting billing at the moment. So we have logged in as fin_IMPL user, and we need to run this particular job, import receivable transaction using auto invoice. So you go back into jobs. You could go into tools and kick off a job. Schedule new process. That's it. You can copy the name. So this particular job will pick up the data from the interface table, RA interface lines table, and it will create AR invoices in the application. So you have to select appropriate parameters. So wait for the parameters to come up. Click OK. And if you're doing an FPDA load using if you're doing an FPDA process to load AR invoices, remember we have seen how FPDA works using journals, right? So if you're probably loading AR invoices for a customer, and if you're loading them in bulk, say for example, if you're loading 50,000 invoices or 1 lakh invoices, what you could do is you could kick off multiple workers here. Okay, so if you are loading 50,000 invoices in one shot, if you kick it off with one worker, it might probably take an hour. It could probably take 1 hour to process all the 50,000 records, 50,000 invoices. But if you pass this as 10, it would just take 10 or 15 minutes to process. So if you have to do a bulk data import of AR invoices into Fusion Cloud application using FPDI, you could also run the import auto invoice job. So if you see here, after you kick off this job, you would notice that import auto invoice job gets triggered, right? So you can directly run this job also. But if you run this job will have the same parameters as you see here, but import auto invoice job will not have this option called number of workers. So yeah, it's like you decide, if you run this wrapper job, you decide how many import auto invoice job workers need to be triggered to process the pending records in interface table. So this will help you quite a bit, guys, in case you had to do a bulk import of AR invoices. So in one of the projects that I did recently, I had to import around 50,000 invoices. So I was not aware of this wrapper. So I ran this particular job. I was doing a data load in dev instance, and it was taking quite a long time. So it used to take 1 or 2 to process each set. So then when I did some research, I got to know that there is a wrapper job which you could use, which is this, and that would give you an option to mention the number of workers there. So then in SIT, when I doing the data load, when I started doing the data load, I was triggering it by passing in the number of workers as 10. It used to complete in less than 10 minutes. What used to take 1 hour, it used to complete in 10 minutes. So yes, you could make use of leverage this particular functionality if required. In this case, it doesn't really matter. One worker should be more than enough because there is only one line that we want to process. So you select the business unit, it's US1 business unit. A transaction source, this is quite important. So you have to select the transaction source. So here, when the line from sales order, when the line from sales order is inserted into interface table, it will get inserted into the interface table with a transaction source as distribution. Let me show you that. It would get inserted with this particular name, with this particular transaction source. Distributed order orchestration. In other words, you can call it as DOO. So when the sales order line is inserted into interface table, it gets inserted with this particular transaction source. So when you're running the import auto invoice job, you have to mention the source as that. Otherwise, the line will not get picked up. So you can leave the default data as today. That's okay. And you can mention the from and to customer. So if you don't pass in any customer details, this job will try to pick up whatever records are there in interface table for US1 business unit with a particular transaction. So if there are 100 other lines, apart from your sales order line, all of them will be picked up, and the job attempts to create AR invoices for them. And you might run into issues because of sales orders that doesn't belong to you. So to avoid confusion, we restrict this particular run to only the customer that we are interested in. So you say computer service and rentals, and you pick up the same customer. So I just want to pick up the invoices of that particular customer alone. Or if you want, you can also mention from and to sales order number as well. This is even more specific. So I could have probably said, I could have probably passed in this particular sales order number here, but that's okay. I think there is only one line for this particular customer. So let's go ahead and submit it. So all I'm trying to do is there is a line in the interface table, RA interface lines table. I'm trying to create an AR invoice by running this import job. And this would kick off 2 jobs, import auto invoice and import auto invoice execution report. So this is the actual worker which would create an invoice. Before I forget it, guys, we will have session tomorrow as well, and it will be the last session for your batch. We will be covering core HR module. We'll cover the core HR cycle. We'll do the setups. We'll do the required configurations, and then we will test the configuration as well by hiring the employee. So with that, it will be done for the training would be completed for your batch. Please try to attend if possible, or go through the recording, and you can let me know if you have any questions. So you could see that yes, import auto invoice job has been triggered, and it has also kicked off an execution report. So import auto invoice is slightly tricky. You cannot go by the status of the completion status, meaning you might see succeeded here, but it could so happen that the line might have run into an error. So don't go by the completion status. You have to really open up the PDF document and verify if the line is imported or not. So you can open up the PDF output, download it, open it with preview, and that will tell you how many lines were there. So there were 3 lines that were there, and all of them were successfully processed. So if you scroll down further, you could see that there were 3 lines and 3 lines were successfully processed. And what is important in this report is, yes, you just verify if there is nothing in a rejected list or not. But what is tricky here is it doesn't tell you what invoice it created for that particular sales order. Okay, so it just tells you how many lines were there and how many lines were processed. So there were 3 lines for that particular sub customer, and 3 lines have been imported in successfully. And now what you can do is you can go into a billing. So you can verify the invoice created from a billing screen. You go into receivables, go into billing. You should be able to see the transaction created. So you click on manage transactions, click on the task ribbon, click on manage transactions. And manage transactions gives you an option to search for transaction by using various criteria or different criteria. And one of them is a reference field, and that reference is nothing but a sales order number. So you could search for an AR invoices created for a particular sales order reference. So you paste in the sales order reference and you search for it. Yeah, you could probably say a transaction source as distributed order orchestration. And what does that mean? That means it's a invoices imported from order management module. Go ahead and search for it. Could see that there is an invoice created and this is the invoice number. Open it up. And you would be able to see all the details on the invoice, like the customer. It has come from order management. AR invoice has been created. It's in complete status. Bill to name, ship to name, and you could also see the line that has been shipped out. So where did this line come from? This line has come from order management module. Remember, this is the laptop that we have shipped to the customer. So, and this is where what you would do. This you would print this invoice out and send it across to the customer, and that is where the AR invoice report, AR invoice print report that we have created comes into picture. And that customer will get to see the details. He understands that he needs to make this payment against the laptop that he has bought, and he has a 15 days time to make a payment. So today is 14th August, and if you add 15 days to it, it's 29th August. So he has to make a payment by then. So what that guy will do, so a customer would make a payment against this particular invoice. So what do you do in such case? Let's copy this invoice. Let's copy the transaction number. And if you go into this, if you look at manage installments or manage balances, if you look at view balance details, you could see that this is a balance outstanding. Yeah, 54079 is a balance outstanding. And after this, you will receive cash from a customer. And after you receive cash from a customer, what do? You would have to create a receipt for it. So you go back into receivables, but this time to create a receipt, for billing information, meaning invoices, debit memos, credit memos, which are created, you go in here. And if you want to manage the receivables, whatever you have received, you would go into accounts receivable screen, go into AR, and you click on the task ribbon, and you can create a receipt manually. And say US1 business unit. Select the receipt method. Yeah, you could check it. You could select whatever option you want. You could probably select EFT. You're basically mentioning how you have received the payment. Okay, so you could mention the receipt number. You could enter the number of the invoice itself as a receipt number. And what's the amount that we need to pay out? It's 540.79 if my memory is fine. And you scroll down, against which particular customer account number we have received it, or what's the account number of the customer. I've given it in the PPT. You could also use a search by the name. That's fine. One 10060 is account number. To search for a site, pick up any site. That's okay. So you're just mentioning from which customer you received the amount, in which bank account you received the amount, and you're creating a receipt manually. And if you scroll down, you can also mention the deposit date when it was deposited in your account. And if you scroll down further, you have an option to match this receipt against an open invoice. So you click on plus icon, it will add a row, and you can search for a reference number. So you could do it this way, or what you could do is you can add open receivables, and that would let you search for a transaction number for the customer. So you could enter it. You can do a blind search. There shouldn't be many invoices pending against this customer. So you can search for a customer number. You sort it by due date, descending order. You could see your transaction number created at the top. So this is a transaction number that got created, right? 106390 for this particular sales order. So you pick that one up, 540.79, and you add it. Cancel. So you're creating a receipt and applying it against the invoice because yes, we received the payment from a customer in our bank account. And we will go ahead and you have two options. You have four options. In fact, you submit and apply manually, meaning you have to apply it later on explicitly. Submit and auto apply, meaning receipt gets created and it gets auto applied against the invoice, meaning the balance on the invoice gets knocked off. Or you can use submit and create another, meaning this receipt gets created and you could create another receipt. So you click on submit and auto apply now because I want the receipt to be created and the balance on invoice to be knocked off. I want it to be auto applied against the invoice. Let's wait for it to go through. You could see that a receipt status is confirmed, receipt number is this, and you could see the balance on the invoice amount due is 0, and this is the applied amount. And you have few options available here. If you want to unapply the application, probably you applied in a receipt against a wrong invoice by mistake, you can unapply the application, and that would show a balance outstanding on the. So that would show unapplied amount as 1,000. That would show unapplied amount as 540.79 here. And you could pick up another invoice and apply it against it. I mean, if you commit some mistakes, you have an option to unapply it and apply the receipt to another invoice. So all such usual options are available to correct data errors or manual errors. So you could see receipt created, balance knocked off on the invoice. You save and close. Go back. Let's verify the balance on the invoice. It should be 0 now. I have invoice number with me now. I don't have to use reference to query it. And you see balance details at 0 at the moment, meaning yes, this is the amount that we need to receive, and that much amount has already been received. So the total is 0. And you can go ahead and post it to a ledger. So when you post it to a ledger, the transaction would be accounted and it would be posted to ledger as well. Provided the auto accounting rules, although the accounting rules are set up correctly, you should not get any errors. Accounting entries need to be generated, and those entries need to be and then the journal needs to be posted into, or the invoice needs to be posted into GL. You click on view accounting, you will be able to see the accounting entries as well. But see the accounting entries created. Okay, so it's a receivables account has been debited and a revenue account has been credited. If you have more than 10 years of experience, you could probably expect few questions around accounting as well. Like what sets of accounting entries get generated in order to cash cycle or procure to pay cycle. So you could try to list down the accounting transactions that get created at each and every step. And at the end of it, if you knock off everything, you would have you would have inventory account debited and you would have cash account credited. That would be the final entry that you get in order to cash. But if you have less than 10 years, you could very well say that I'm not very sure on the accounting. That's absolutely fine. And you cancel this. If you're going to journal, if you're going to monitor process screen, you would be able to see that import journal job would be running in the background. We could also account and post the transaction as well, or the receipt as well. So you go back, go to receipt, search for the receipt that has been created. We use the invoice number as a receipt number. You search for it, and you can post it as well. Accounting complete. And if you look at the accounting, you would be able to see a second set of entries that are generated. If you look at the previous entries, receivable account was debited and a revenue account was credited. And if you look at this particular account, cash account is debited and receivables account is credited. So receivables account is credited here and receivables account was debited in the invoice. So these two gets knocked off. So that's how accounting really works when you move from one stage to another stage in a cycle. So this is the entry that got generated for AR receipt, right? If you remember what we have seen in AR invoice, receivable account was debited 540, but here receivables account was credited 540, meaning you can knock off those two entries. So what you are left with is a confirmed cash account of 540.0.79, which means your inventory account, if you knock off all the entries, you should be left with only one entry, which says inventory account debited or credited and the cash account debited. That should be the final entry that you should have in an order to cash cycle. Okay. And yeah, any questions, guys? Any questions on what we covered today? Okay, I'll take it as no. And yeah, so try it out and let me know if you have any questions tomorrow. We'll meet for one last time tomorrow and we will try to do a core HR setups, and I'll show you how to hire an employee after you do those core HR setups. Okay, any questions, guys? Yeah, that's a good one. Jyoti is asking, when will the logbox come into picture? So we created this particular receipt manually, right? But imagine in real time, you might be dealing with 100 customers. You might be dealing with 1,000 plus orders or 1,000 plus invoices, right? So you cannot manually create receipts one at a time. And that is when what you normally do is you get a logbox file from bank. So you might be maintaining your bank account with maybe Wells Fargo or a Citibank, right? And you go to that bank and you tell them, you ask them to give you a logbox file, and that logbox file will have all the deposits that have been done into your company bank account. And all you do is you would use logbox to import those receipts automatically into the application. So if you have probably received cash from 100 customers against different invoices, you would have that information in a logbox file and you import that logbox file into application. How do you import it? You have an option, you have an FPDA option to import a logbox file or import receipts in bulk. You will use that option. Okay. We don't have any conversion interfaces in cloud, Panilia. So what you're doing in FPDA, HCM data loader, those are nothing but the interfaces that you build. Or if you're loading master data, that is basically called as conversion. If you're loading transactional data, or if you're doing a transaction data load, which would happen on a multiple basis, multiple times, you call it as interfaces. If you're loading master data, maybe supplier items or customers, you call it conversions. But be it interfaces or conversions, you will have to do it only through the data loaders. You cannot say that I'll create a staging table, I'll write a loader script, and I'll do it the way I've been doing in EBS. That's not possible. Yeah. I'm not particularly sure. I'm hearing that for the first time, Jyoti. Gold passport interface. I'm not really sure. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thanks for your time. We'll meet again tomorrow then. Thank you.